we should get going. If you still have ideas about where you'd like to spend the summer, please share it with us. But meanwhile, I'm going to make a bit of introductions. So as you know, this is part of a growth webinar series dedicated to our business ecosystem. We're organizing this without, let's say, pro bono for the learning that we all get, the shared learning and experiences out of this amazing community. We've had amazing guests so far, and today is no exception. I know Michael for how many years? 5, 6?
It's been a long time now. I don't even want to age. I didn't have gray hair when we met.
Okay, and Michael actually is a seasoned CEO. I am actually amazed every time we meet. I learn more and more about his proven track record of how he changed and transformed many technology companies that he was involved with. Globally, even growing companies from a few millions in the 250 million range. There's quite a lot to say about your background, Michael. I just want to say that the topic for today is one that I actually suggested because I believe you are one of the people that is walking the walk of what they are talking. Many people talk about AI, not so many actually have experience and actually hands-on experience about what it means to implement it in business and with different business functions. So I think this is why you being here today is actually a gift for all of us, and I look forward to learning as much as possible about how we can augment business processes with AI from you. So welcome, and please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Laura Dana, and thank you for that introduction, and welcome everybody. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with me. I wanted to, when Laura Dana and I first talked about doing the presentation, it was sort of an evolvement of where we were. This company as a technology company was sort of in the ditch. And these are challenges that I like to take on. Historically, I'm an investment banker and from private equity management, and I took this company over to flip it. The owners and the company had died. It was kind of in chaos. And so we just wanted to stabilize and let go of it. But when I got into the company, there looked like there was some real opportunity here to develop a document management tool that extended beyond where our customer base was. Most of our stuff is done in the justice systems and the court systems, but we saw opportunity for people to have organization through imaging and workflow just in other departments. And so as we started to evolve the company, we saw AI, bot, and machine learning technologies surface. Some inside of our competitor group, of course, you know, on the big scale, IBM and Xerox, they're doing that already. But the middle, the SMB, the small middle market players, really to adopt this technology, it was price prohibitive, very expensive. And so we started looking at this about 3.5 years ago. And as open source and sharing comes more available, we're finding this technology, we can drive the price down, and there's limited number of processes in the organizations that we deal with. And so competitors we felt that they were sort of taking advantage of our customers and our prospect base. And we just decided that we would get into this business, learn it, and augment these products inside of our product line. And our revenue jumped last year as a result of just having a beta through the technology. And so, of course, we expected a tremendous year. COVID-19 has slowed us down, but we're starting to see the markets open up again as people go back to work in the US and in the government systems where we play. We think that we can still have a pretty good year, and we're going to lean on some of this technology, not just from a selling standpoint, but from actually using it internally. And so that's how we're going to talk about that today. So let me just kind of jump into where we're going to go. Just again, I'm going to take this from a very, I'll just call it a Michael perspective, which is layman terms, very easy. My background in technology is very limited to being more on the executive side, but I'm going to stay there because going to the technical side will really show the lack of intelligence I have in this area. But I'm going to talk about the stereotypes, how they're used, and what is the paradox? Why are people not adopting this technology if it's affordable? And then how client engagement works through those issues, and then I'll open up to some Q&A. So just talking about the stereotypes a little bit more, not to read the definition, I think you'll get a copy of this, but of course you have bots, which are just do something, data entry, point and click. Artificial intelligence is the culmination of the data that's collected that can help with some of the problem solving, and bots can be included in that process of bringing the information to the forefront. And then there's machine learning, which is really interesting. Machine learning to us is an area that we're really expanding on our product line of workflow automation for our clients. But it's the collective of that information to just simply make better decisions. And in fact, machine learning allows some of the decisions to be presented to the users. And then the last stereotype is the human intelligence, which I'm the weak link, I always joke, in the organization. But this is the ability to take all that data together, aggregate it, and then using feeling and reasoning and perceiving to go with your gut that I always refer to or you hear about. So what are some of the applications? These are kind of no-brainers. I think a lot of us understand how these technologies are used and frankly where they came from. But the military, of course, being a large user, the government, just in general, a lot of these technologies are pushed out from the government. And somebody goes in the private sectors and say, hey, I have an idea, I can do it better. And that's how it morphs into an application that can be used in the private sector. But space, medicine, these technologies, we're all somewhat familiar with now because we kind of see the evolution and the innovation take place because of the technology. And so I think that's logical, it's reasonable. I'm going to stay in the business space because that's where we are. I have no knowledge or in-depth knowledge of those other technologies other than how we can apply it to business. But in the business space, it's all about survival of the fittest. And I think these technologies can be a real edge to any organization, not just the ones that we support, which is the government space. So in the business space, typically all organizations are going to have some level of operations, some, of course, sales and marketing. We've got to grow or die, right? And then customer service to really retain those clients and to create a great experience so those customers will stay loyal, buy more, stay and refer. We call that creating champions. And then a new one that we stepped into last year that we're really starting to see is becoming very important to our customers is predictive analytics. Really that drives through employee behavior. So monitoring, tracking them, not just to see what they're doing that's nefarious, but that's part of it, but also their productivity. Predictive analytics with those technologies can tell us if this employee is a good behavior, has good behavior, bad behavior. Based on that data, is this employee in the long range going to be a good employee for us, or we're going to have to spend a lot of time coaching? In operations, it's simply point and click, or indexing. You scan a file and you have to type in the last name and first name. With this technology, you just fire and forget. You scan the document, it automates the indexing fields, puts it in a file folder, is searchable, retrieval, just point and click. In sales and marketing, this is where I'm going to touch on today. How can we use those technologies to augment or improve the engagement with clients? And that includes on the services side as well. So I just want to give you a case study. This is one of the customers. This is a Bureau of Investigations, what we call boots on the ground technology. One of the challenges or problem solves that we were kind of asked to help with was in the organization, investigators spend a lot of time in the office going through cases. So they get a pile of caseloads and they have to flip through those cases and look for this criteria in a manual way. And so they've got a list of criteria that says, okay, this is a good investigation. It's a high mileage investigation. We really want to look at this. It has a level of activity that we think we need to pay attention to. And so they sift through 60, 70, 100 cases a week. And then after they determine what those cases are that are important to see, they create a stack, like an A stack, a B stack, and a C stack. And they grab that A stack and they go boots to the ground. They basically go and they begin the investigation, they serve their warrants, right? They start that whole process. But the problem is that they're only boots on the ground in the field doing investigations 20% of the work week. And that's a huge problem because that creates a backlog. And of course, there's always limited budgets, right? In the private sector, everybody doesn't have a budget for it. But guess what? In the government sector, nobody has a budget for it. So we came back and said, okay, well, let's do a study on this. What is the target goal? The target goal is to get those investigators to do more investigations and make sure they're doing the best ones. And so we can just take a set of rules from what is a good investigation, apply that inside the technology, run those cases through that technology, and using bots, AI, and machine learning all together, just in a matter of minutes, it can take all of those cases and present to the investigator, here are the ones that you need to see. Now, it doesn't mean that the investigator can't come in and say, hey, I don't want to see these ones. I think this one's wrong, just my gut tells me. Well, that's part of the human intelligence that's engaged in the decision-making process. But it does speed up the decision. And if you just look at the human attendance cost, which is the investigators, you can see while in the beginning from the bottom chart, in year one, they have to make an investment. There's no question about it. But with that investment in technology, the cost of the human attendance to accomplish more, to see more of those investigations, diminishes significantly. It cuts the total cost of the technology and the human attendant almost in half. But if you look at the human attendant costs, what you're basically seeing is one investigator can do the job of multiple investigators as they adopt this technology over time. And so the adoption rate each year, as it increases, the cost of the human attendance to see that caseload diminishes down to literally one investigator after 5 years. And so that technology continues to benefit year after year after year. So that's a really interesting case study that really kind of launched our interest and said, you know, we think that there's more applications in different departments inside of our customer base, and so let's go and explore that. And that led to where one of the big challenges was employee productivity. So here we have an investigator now that is able to do all of this, you know, stuff in a very focused way. All the other lower caseloads can be passed on. They can be done by the phone. They can be done by other means. But let's say that one investigator in a department of 100 is not getting anything done. So the cost of the cases is actually going up. With predictive analytics, the next frontier, we're able to present to the customer a tool that says, well, let's look at what that individual is doing. So with predictive analytics, we can take, I know that's Simon Cowell, right? It's a little joke. Developers like to do stuff like that. But we can take that investigator and we can monitor their activity on the network or using our network. And so with a tool like this one called ID, we can literally go into the file on real time, see what the employee's doing, which of course seems very invasive, but it's not designed to be a nefarious tool to spy on, you know, the employees, but for lack of a better term, that's what you do. But you can't get to every employee in an organization, right? You can't monitor 2,500 employees unless they're all bad. If they're all bad, then you're probably not gonna have a company. But this tool can say, okay, within the parameters of a productive employee, here's one that is being suggested through AI and machine learning. Here's one that's suggested as somebody that's not getting a lot of work done. So why is that? So we can even drill into where they go. We can look at their Explorer, we can look at their Notepad, Firefox, Adobe, Excel, PowerPoint. We can even break into the Excel and PowerPoint. Now again, the reaction of the customers that wanted this was, whoa, wait a second, that's a civil rights violation. It is not a civil rights violation. As an employee of that organization, it's within the employer's right to see how they're using the tools and technologies during those paid periods. And so again, as long as it's not as used responsibly, this technology can say, all right, look, Simon Cowell, this investigator, he's not getting to his caseloads. He must be out judging America's, whatever, right? The talent agent that he is, he's not paying attention to getting the caseloads investigated and done. So we can look inside of this and say, okay, you're right. He's spending a lot of time in a cluster area from 1 to 4. He's kind of out of this bandwidth range. What is he doing in the afternoon? Is he sneaking out and going and scouting for talent instead of doing investigations? So we can drill into that and look exactly what he's doing. This technology is very robust. It can be used for other things too, because breaches are a huge problem in corporations throughout the world. Data being taken, credit card information. I ran a commercial investment banking program for a large corporation. And one of the biggest challenges we had was the brokers or investment reps, as well as the bankers, going to other banks. Back in 1999 and 2001, companies like Wells Fargo were offering bankers and investment brokers bonuses to come over to their organization based on their production, right? Well, based on that production is one thing, but why would somebody pay a huge bonus to somebody coming to an organization just because they're a good producer? There's a big ramp up time. So a lot of these brokers and agents were stealing customer lists. And let's just be honest, sales reps that are migrant and go elsewhere, they do that. They take the customer list, go, these are my relationships, I can do whatever I want with them. That's between you all and the law and some of the customers that we serve. But the reality is that you can't do that. And so what this technology can do is not only give you predictive analytics, but if an employee goes in and downloads customer information or a customer file, this system can provide that alert to our clients and say, hey, this person's digging in the client files or kind of spend a lot of time where they're not supposed to be, right all the way to we can shut their computer down, including their scanner if it's hooked up to the network. So this can be as uninvasive or as invasive as we want. It's a fascinating tool. But again, customers want these technologies, but for some reason, we have a problem with adoption. So here's the data that supports that. So 72% of business leaders see the advantage of using this technology. There's proven case study and use cases, some that I've even shown you, or one that I've even shown you. There's many, many more on top of that can increase productivity, including mobilizing a business sales and marketing organization. So there's a clear consensus that these technologies, people see value in them. And of course, there's a huge market for them because anybody in every organization can use these. So the real question is, if leaders, business leaders and business owners really understand the value of using this technology, then why are only 29% of the companies in the US using it? It's a huge question, especially now in our space where we play, it's affordable. Why are we running into, 7 out of 10 clients don't want to use the tech. They want it, but they don't want to buy it. So that we call, of course, the adoption paradox. And so we use history as a lot of a teaching here, but we humans have a history with technology, and it's actually kind of humorous. If you look at some of the big technology changes in the turns of the century, in the 1800s, there's literally an article, multiple articles on this, but humans were afraid to get on trains because they felt that the speed of the train constantly going, not like riding a horse, because they could ride a horse too, but a train could just go on and on and on forever in their mind. And certainly at those speeds, it would just melt your skin over time. Or it would just suffocate and pull the air out of you and you would die. So, of course, trains today are very mainstay. They're updated, they're modern, they're well used. But in the 1800s, you had people that literally wouldn't get on it. In the 1900s, this is one of my favorites, but you can get in trouble with your spouse, so be careful. But telephone lines were emitting evil spirits. They're going to electrocute you. And this is the controversy. And a lot of men believed that with the telephone, their wives would have another means of gossiping and they wouldn't get to their chores on time. So I just want to say I'm not a sexist. But that is there's a fact. It's actually published in a news article. And then, of course, we all probably remember Y2K. It's the end of the world. Our technology is going to die. Systems are going to go down. Planes can't fly. And we turned the century, and it was kind of a non-event. And also, this is a theme probably, we've heard in the last 40 years, but computers are going to take our jobs. And that was back even when I got into industry in the early 90s. I remember people saying, oh, that's it. That's it. Well, nobody's going to have a job. Really, outsourcing is a big part of what's, taken our jobs. But computers really haven't replaced it. In fact, I think computers have made us busier. And so today, now it's bots. Bots are going to take our jobs, right? And so it's fear and change. That's the adoption paradox. That's the reason organizations simply see the value and they want it, but they're afraid to get it for a whole host of reasons. I don't think they think it's going to suffocate them or take their breath away. I don't think it's going to make their wives gossip more or electrocute us. I think there's a part of that. It's going to replace us there, but also it's also just not understanding the technology. We fear things we don't understand. So how do you solve that problem? Well, we say client engagement. Our products and services here, it's not like going to a 7-Eleven and deciding if you want Coca-Cola or Pepsi. I mean, you can't have a person, sales rep there, kind of going through the benefits of each. These are complex tools, but they do simplify a business or organization's life and the user's life. But to get there, there's some work that has to be done. So to shift that paradox, to overcome that fear and of change, we have to use a lot of education with our clients. And we see that started to chisel away at it. And one of the things that we see at the very beginning, and maybe we've all felt this way as business owners, I certainly did too, even though we were out there selling it, it started to create more fear and anxiety in me. But there's an all or nothing mindset. The all or nothing mindset is, hey, I'm going to get chatbots. They're going to make us rich. I'm going to just be monitoring my business with a pina colada on the boat in the Caribbean with my feet up, getting some sun, because the chatbots are going to take care of it all, right? And that is a real mindset. And that's not just a mindset of the typical user, but we see that mindset in the way, in a more elevated way. But that same mindset of all or nothing is within people that are skilled in technology. We deal with a lot of IT administrators, and they say, okay, I just want to fix this one process. That to me is an all or nothing approach. And as we work through that, what they'll start to see is you fix one process, but then that process speeds up data transformation, speeds up the ability to have another decision-making element, but it clogs up all the areas after the technology is in place. So you kind of have to look at it globally. And so as we probe for answers with our clients, or as you look at this technology for your organization, first thing that we walk the clients through is, what do you want to accomplish here? What's your desire? And what are the processes that you have now? What are the outcomes? How much do the current processes cost you to do? What are the errors in that? And what are the opportunity costs if we freed up that time and eliminated that time? What decisions can you make and how much faster? And what is the errors and how can we reduce those errors? I will tell you that with an auto indexing where we have a lot of clients that are scanning cases, right? They got to sit there all day, they scan in PDF and they do last name, first name. Okay, that cannot happen in large organizations. What they have to do is take maybe 10,000 cases, put it into a scanner, and it would take 2 or 3 humans, probably 6 weeks to get through that indexing. And there'd be a lot of errors, significant number of errors. And I'm talking 28 to 30% errors. With this technology, you can scan the document. It can read the data, black out things that shouldn't be seen, highlight things that should be seen with the original document in place, auto index, auto populate the fields that need to be populated, and it can be done just within a matter of hours. So again, it's powerful technology, and what you do is you free up those other 2 people to do other more important things. So those are the conversations that we have to have, but when you free those 2 people up, what are they doing, right? Do they need more technology? So we're taking our own medicine here. And one of the things that, again, this is how we sort of evolved our use of this technology or desired use of technology. But like a lot of customers, and I'm sure, Dana, you and your team have experienced this, somebody just wants to do social media. It's going to make them rich. They're going to sit on the boat with a pina colada, and Laura, Dana, and her team are just going to push some buttons and go out content, and that's it, right? Or they'll just do email marketing, or they'll just do what we do, which is a lot of outbound calling and proactive relationships to build our lead base. And so we kind of put together some information, just a subset of information, and said, okay, let's just take a look at that. How long does it take for us in a very limited scale to get a sale from each one of these technologies independently? So we say, okay, well, we're going to spend about $15,000 to go to this universe that we have in these markets for this particular product, right? So we're going to bang the market over and over again. We're going to do a lot of frequency. We're going to do a lot of reach. And we're going to do some postings, and we're going to do some communications, and we're going to measure the impressions. And then when we get our leads, we're going to look at what is this lead like versus the ones that we get from actually cold calling. Well, here's what we found. We found that it takes a lot of activity to generate a sale just from the social media or e-commerce is how I refer to it. But the average sale size is actually much higher than our actives from proactive calling. So why is that? I don't know. I mean, I can surmise some things. One is frequent education, right? So ours is an educational sell. Like I said, it's not a Coca-Cola versus Pepsi. It really requires some thought. And there's not as much, competition for drinks. Like in our space, there's just not as much competition in DMS. It's either big companies or smaller companies like ours trying to get into the game. But the velocity of the deal to close is about a year. And for outbound calling, it's about a week. So we have to look at all those numbers, and we sort of evolve the conclusion that we do have more control in our feeling from our business. And while it seems a little bit more costly to do social media, that's scalable. Whereas outbound calling, to get more results, hiring more people is important. You got to train them, you got to coach them, you got to develop them. And so going back to, what is the solution here? It's not an all or nothing. It's an augmentation of technologies. And the great part about it is we can do these things, and we know we can do these things. And Laura Dana has been helping us and telling us we need to do more of these things. And so we're going to listen to her more and more each year. We're stubborn, but we move. But it's not social media versus email marketing versus outbound calling. We think it's social media and email marketing and outbound calling, right? It's the augmentation of all of these working together in an integrated way. And we think that, and Blythe thinks, our marketing director, and I agree with her, those outbound calls are also getting these messages. They're a part of this universe. And so they're getting educated. And as we get to them, right, these are customers or prospects. They're not in the buying cycle. They're in the exploring cycle. And so even though the revenue is lower, it probably closes because of the knowledge, the frequency, the reach, the branding, the name recognition, the loyalty, right? It's a culmination of all those things. If we took those out, would that affect our outbound calling? Yeah, probably would. Do we know what that is? Not really. We know what these were beforehand, but we're evolving so fast, it's hard to track it. But we do know that where we put our commitments now require us to continue to do the outbound calling to grow our business and customer base, but using those technologies together. So last slide here, kind of got everybody through it in 27 minutes. So it's a little longer than I thought it would take. I said 25, but we're going to kind of, take our own medicine here. But we know that from all of that type of interaction, that frequency and reach, the most important thing that happens, no matter where that lead comes from, is our ability to engage with the client. Coaching, development, teaching our representatives how to be better at communicating it, to the audience that they're talking to that moment, and capturing that lead and that conversation and maximizing the conversation. is very important to us as a company that's sort of, I say we're a 20-year-old company, but we're a startup with capital, we're profitable, and we have customers, because we had to turn it around and reform our company. So 3.5 years ago, we just kind of went on this mission. And how do we use this technology ourselves while we're out there preaching our customers should use it and pushing them along? How do we use this technology ourselves? So one of the technologies we're going to adopt is technology from a company called Gong. I did get their permission to say that, but they're a monitoring agency. So they take voice data, they listen to the conversations of our associates with prospects and with clients, and that data is captured and it presents information to us that's important to us, such as conversations with clients that say, I just love you guys because, right? The AI and machine learning technologies will build on that data and present it to us after a culmination of phone calls and say, this is what customers love about you. This is what customers love about your products. Or this is what customers don't like about you. Or these are the objections that we're hearing. It's budget or change, or I like my way. And we can use that information to teach our associates how to engage the client and help them sort of overcome some of those objections. Overcome if you ride the train, you're going to melt or you're not going to be able to breathe, right? We can have those conversations. And what we're seeing is those efforts that really started last year, our revenue growth really in the last half of the year jumped 35% just because we're having better engagement. And this year, even though COVID-19's kind of knocked everybody in the gut, a good part of 3 months, we think that we actually will still grow our business this year because we've evolved the relationship conversation that our associates are having with clients and prospects. And we're not just selling a product, we're bundling solutions. So we're coming at them from a turnkey approach. And that means deal sizes are higher, closure rates we're already seeing are higher. And so, integrating the technology on the social media, the e-commerce side to generate more leads, that can be done, click of button, but integrating technology to improve the close ratio of the conversations with client is this technology. And so that's kind of how we're doing business and how we're dealing with our clients with these technologies. And so I'm done. I hope that I didn't make everybody dizzy or put anybody to sleep. But I guess now, Laura Dane, I'll just turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Michael. This has been really interesting. I didn't thought you are able to pack so much information into about half an hour. So thanks for the crash course. We have quite a few points and questions from the audience. But I'll give you a minute to get some water or something, and then we'll get started with the Q&A. Before that, I just wanted to make a few points because I knew we're heading to this conversation today, and because even for us, it's starting to be a real business theme on how can we prepare for the AI. We're already embedding, even with small tasks, but where we see repetitive tasks of people, we're embedding AI and different tools just to at least get them out of that, boring zone that can really motivate them. So I believe that it's even more than just savings or scale. It's about enabling people to do more work, more meaningful work for them, while repetitive tasks can be definitely automated. And a question that I personally had is, I had a recent conversation with someone at UiPath actually. And what was interesting about it is that I was arguing that RPA is only a phase. Why I mean that? And it's been an awesome debate. I hope we will bring it live at some point. They're also invited to one of our webinars. But why I was saying that is that technology should do all of these natively. we should not train robots to do something just because technology is not natively able to do something. Like if, you know, a feature is requested by, I don't know, a financial or an ERP or a CRM or something that they are not able to do now, that we need a bot to check the bills in the system to make sure that the balance is done right or something, technology should be able to natively do that. So I believe that actually RPA may be a phase. I totally believe in AI, and I believe that, you know, as we progress, I totally agree with Mark Cuban, which I heard say quite recently, that the future of work is actually going to be owned by the ones that are able to control bots in their day-to-day activity. And this was an advice that he gave for someone that was asking what should they do next in their career. So now that I hope that I gave you a bit of a break to catch your air, do you mind if we take a few questions? Yeah?
No.
Okay, let's go ahead. We have a question on how the robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, and machine learning can revive the supply chain service. So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, it can, and not only revive it, it can make recommendations on how to do it better. Machine learning technology can grasp the data from price to delivery, and then all the processes within end to end, and just determine how that supply chain is effective or not effective. It can even search for additional supply chains. And so there is a human factor in that, though, because ultimately the data that's presented, the decision has to be made, I still think, with some of these technologies. So let me tell you how it would be presented. If you had a supply chain where you had pricing issues, delivery issues, quality issues, right? And then you have buyer demand at the very end of that. So the human engagement in this process would have to look at other supply chain competitors, for example, and look at their chains. And that can go all the way back, say, for a grocery store to the farm. And it can go all the way back to the antibiotics they might be giving to an animal. But all those decision-making processes can be served up in a queue. And that's largely how a lot of our customers sort of get their arm around it, is they don't want the bot to be making all the decisions, all the recommendations, and then that's it. It's a blind, lights out process. So we build, and most build, a queue that allows the human that Mark Cuban's talking about. It allows the human to look at the queue and say, okay, on this data point, based on the data presented to us, this machine is suggesting that the outcome that you want is 92% effective. So through all that process, the machine, the computer, the software says, hey, this is 92%. What is the human decision process if you didn't use this technology? The error rate for human process for this could be 82%. So the supervisor ultimately has that decision to say, okay, using this supply chain with these elements in here, or picking another one, we feel, the software feels 92% effective, this is a better route to go. At that point, it's a click of a button and the decision's made by the human. Now, you can light out that process, but somebody still has to make contact to develop that supply chain. I don't see this technology is being sold in a lights out process way to a lot of our clients. And that's a huge mistake, because that data has to be gathered. And in the beginning, the software confidence level could only be 25%. But the software can train itself on the things that are right. And if the human comes in and says, okay, in these factors, these considerations, this document, this pricing, I don't agree with, it's wrong, that's not right factors. The human engaging the software can make that input, and then the software can train itself to use those additional considerations that the human is inputting. And so I don't know if that is clear as mud, but the bottom line is that the data that's provided, no matter how it's being used, the human has a very important role in the process. And it's the ultimate authority, because if it fails, you can go back and point to the software, but if as a supervisor, a manager, or decision maker, you're making the decisions on a blind basis, well, that'll come back and bite you too.
Yeah. And I also know that during our webinar, you just mentioned, you know, how you can implement it with operations, with sales and marketing, with customer service, with predictive analytics. So all of those have applications in supply chain, definitely. Yeah. Thanks so much for your thoughts on this. Another question here was, so these are questions that people addressed prior to the to our webinar. I ask everyone today that right now in our conversation to address their questions either in the chat pane or just come off mute and ask. But we have a couple of a few more questions, and then we'll get to the chat pane. We have a question on any ideas on how to automate content creation for a specific industry. I believe that ties into what Microsoft just did, that they outsourced all their copywriting to robots, right? So any thoughts on how to automate content creation for a specific industry?
Well, again, that's relative, right? It depends on what you want the machine to do. If it's about creating content as it applies to me versus a machine, I'd turn it over to the machine every time. It's not something that I want to do. But I don't have a good core knowledge on how to answer that question. I could only just give you my opinion. But because really we work more with the redaction of content, not the creation of it. But let me tell you how we use that tool, and maybe this can hit on it a little bit. So in some of the justice systems, let's say they have a case and there's certain information in that case or in that document or in that image that must be redacted and replaced with different information. So a simple one would be a case number where there's a convicted felon, and it's a stalking situation, right? And so they don't want to release the name of the individual being stalked, the address, the victim, the defendant. And so for content, this is a very simple example, but for content, what we're required to do, instead of just blacking it out, opposing legal counsel wants to see what rule or legislative rule allows that information to be blacked out. So beyond the fact that you care about the victim and their kids and not giving that information out to somebody who may be a previously convicted felon or somebody who has a vendetta or a family member to go to their house and burn it, we're required to have legislative content created in rule sets that says, okay, this is a social security number. Legislative or House bill goes over that information. And so when it's public or made public at some point in the case settlement, that's created. My guess is, the question is more, how can somebody write a nice article for me without having to get involved? If I give some basic rules, I have no idea on how that would be used.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I wanted to mention that you may have more ideas than you're just thinking about right now. I think you are one of the first ones years back that mentioned about content curation and about reworking the way we produce content. This actually changed quite a few things in our industry. And there are tons of content, AI generated content, anything from amazing visuals. Even PowerPoint has right now AI features, for example, that can redo your, if, for example, you don't have design skills or someone doesn't have design skills, they just can redo with the power of AI their PowerPoint and it looks amazing. There's video AI generating tools. There's quite a lot of writing being done with at least AI assisted copywriting. So in our space, at least, content production is constantly trying to go towards AI. We're not there yet. I had recently a conversation with one of our partners in the business, one of our managing partners, and we were just saying that although we've tested a dozen tools or more by now, we don't think the human can yet be replaced, but I think we'll get there. You know, any technology, it's at the beginning now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like with the machine learning, it should be able to curate some content. But again, the information that's presented in terms of how our customers use it and how we're going to use it is a culmination of a lot of data points. You're talking about millions and millions and millions and millions of data points that it can even make a simple, you know, sort of recommendation or suggestion or give a confidence level. But I think over time it'll be able to do it. Chatbots are a good starting point because all they have to do is reverse the information that they're capturing and put that into rules and then present that out. But you know, at some point where you completely replace the human, I think you're still going to lose something in the transfer. There's got to be a human component. I think they have to work together.
Yeah. And this ties into a question that we also had in one of the forums to register for this webinar, is how to fully automate a CRM. So we had this question: do you believe it is possible to fully automate a CRM?
Well, I can tell you this: we believe it is, and again, through machine learning, can improve that experience, because you're talking about data points, and a lot of those data points, generally speaking, are stagnant, right? Even though you may update a CRM system every day or every hour, every minute, it becomes a static data point, and machine learning can capture that information and provide a lot of decision-making information to the user. And I'll give you an example is one that we have been looking at, but Netsuite is an Oracle product that we have looked at, which will aggregate all the information inside of our organization. It can, you know, integrate with Salesforce or other tools. They have their own CRM system. It can integrate with Zendesk and all these other customer service systems. It can pull from invoicing and subscription payments and amount of time it took and updates on, you know, customers out because they're sick. It can grab all those data points and I think give us the ability to personalize how we engage an existing client, and maybe some in the prospect market. But Gong will be a part of that, because all you're talking about there with CRMs is the use of data. You just have to, as a user, we have to decide what we want to see and what's important to us. And then through engineering and development, those data points are probably available. And so you just sort of put a lasso on them and bring them to the forefront. And you keep testing it. It's not perfect. Even machine learning with point and click processes has to build confidence over time. And as I mentioned, you know, you get a queue and it says 96% confident that this is good information. That same data would come from a CRM system and be able to provide decision-making points as well. So I believe it can be done, and I believe that's a frontier, and I think that's within grasp sooner than curating content. Although I would like curating content to be much quicker. I don't like doing that, as you know.
Okay, so thanks for sharing that. I also believe that things like CRM may be automated, especially with AI-assisted technology. I've seen quite a lot of, for example, bots that sit on your mobile and take all your sales conversation, put them in the CRM, send you a reminder, send you ask you if you have to send an offer or something. So with some of this field work, I believe that there's quite a lot of potential of automating everything via AI. But as you mentioned, I think that the human factor will always be important, even in configuring how that AI will work with the system and with the technology. So,
Right.
In our chat page, Ken is asking, how can AI help marketers? Can it improve the marketing mix and generate better leads? I believe you already mentioned a few technologies and ways that AI can help marketers, but if you want to add anything else, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, I go back to, just taking a sample or subset of sales activity and how we can trace that information. These impressions, if you look at social media in a year, just in a very limited way, in a test way, we can make over 1 million impressions. And augmenting email marketing, make 10% more. So, and what does that really take? A lot of the costs that you see in a cost per close are built-in cost. These impressions, the frequency is very scalable. So using machine learning, AI and bot technology, we can increase the frequency, and scale it up. So I don't, for example, in order to get, 2 sales a year, I may or may not have to double my impressions, but even doing that is just a function of adding a lead size to the market. Mm-hmm. But gathering that information from those conversations and also using the information that's gathered from requests that may be made online or an email, that information is captured. That makes our marketing, positioning, and branding message much, much better. And again, those are things that we look at doing internally, but we also look at outsourcing and have gone down that path with NNC before. But I think we're using it in one limited way, and that is listening to calls to create a better conversational engagement. But as we get better at this, it's natural for us to believe, and we will amplify or increase our frequency and increase our impressions. And so our costs per client acquisition will go down using this technology for better engagement. But this technology means that we need more leads to come into the system, and the cost per lead is going to go down because there's going to be a scale to it. But we think working together, all those technologies can present to us a better way to get leads, a better way to position, and a better way to engage our client. And those things together are going to improve our revenue. And we already see in a limited way it does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, Mike, this is Ken. How are you?
Ken? Good. How are you today?
Nice job. And so the question I asked, if you could go back to that last slide, as a marketing manager, your career depends on how well you determine that mix, right? And it could be any of those 3 components. Is there a value to AI in helping the marketer determine what the optimal mix is to get a certain result? In other words, you spent, you did something to get 1 million impressions in social, 104 in email. Was that the right combination? What if you did more email, less social, or doubled your outbound calling? Would that get? Is there anything like that, or is that something that AI could do to almost a testing or simulation type product that could help marketers?
Yeah, Ken, that's a great question, and the short answer is yes to all of it. If you look at the universe that we're dealing with, it's very limited. You're not talking about a huge universe. This is a subset example, and so in determining the mix of how we use it is a decision. To me, it would seem obvious, but what we look at here is we say, okay, we want to continue our outbound calling, and we think these 2 methods in this particular product vertical, we think if we can expand the prospect universe, that's a cost of leads. That automatically expands the number of impressions, because even if we did the same number of posts, we're out to more people. And so I think it's simple math, but it does take some patience. and while I've worked with this before in past ventures, we're easing into it slowly because we know what we can control in our business. And so just like the adoption paradox, we can sell the technology all day, night long, but our adoption of the technology is very slow because we want to make sure we're spending money where we can get a result. And so right now I'm looking at the return on investment in a very simple way. How long does it take for us to, how many licks does it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop? That's kind of what we joke about here. But if we just simply amplify our universe and our impressions, we think that'll move the needle on the ROI. But at what cost? At some point, we need more human interaction to manage that process and to manage the data information. Well, machine learning and AI technology can present that and limit how much interaction we have to make so we can make decisions, not assemble the data. So this data, for example, is assembled manually. All of this data assembly can be done through AI and machine learning technologies. And then I can look at it and say, great, you know what? We need to 4X our social media. We need a 4X ROI. What is it going to take to get through these electronic channels?
Yeah, so what I'm thinking is I did some work with a client who was a reseller for Dassault Systems, and they had a bunch of really smart folks who were simulation experts. And their simulation product would used in product design, and they could run, the software could run millions of iterations of certain parameters to come up with the best design. And so that's the kind of the thinking I'm doing. If you could plug in, different types of marketing and run the simulations, say, what do I need to do to get the best mix to get that 4X ROI based on past experience, past data points. I mean, for especially, I'm thinking larger marketers, consumer marketers or large, like the Hewlett Packards, IBMs of the world.
Yeah, and I love what you're talking about, Ken, because those technologies right now, to me, are akin to what's happening in this space with AI, bots, and machine learning. Originally, this technology has been in larger organizations for a while. But what we're finding is the small and medium organization market, and most of our market is government, they have as much need for this technology. They reach a scale too. So for example, we deal with 254 counties in Texas in the elections offices. So in the elections offices, you've got some that are in remote areas where the population of the entire county is 200 people. Well, running an election in a county of 200 people is probably not that big of a deal. Running one in Bexar County, where San Antonio, Texas is a big deal. But there's a huge middle market in there that it's hair pulling. They've got turnover issues in their office. They need to automate. And this technology has not been available to them because of cost. So as the technology you're talking about, where they can run those I would love to have that technology. So we would be able to make better decisions, right? But it's probably cost prohibitive for us to use it on our budget. But as it gets out there and it's more used, it'll start getting more affordable. Netsuite is a great example of that. I looked at Netsuite for our organization about 4 years ago. And I thought, there's no way we're going to use Netsuite. I mean, it's designed for small businesses that do 50 million in revenue a year. I mean, that's an expensive product. Well, I've seen that price back off quite a bit each year. Every year they come back to me, I've seen that price back off more and more. And well, now we're going to adopt it. So yeah, I think I'd love to get the link for that simulation, Ken, if you don't mind sharing. I'd love to see that. Or who that
I'll dig through some of my archives. I actually wrote some articles on it, so I'll.
Okay. Love to see those.
All right, great. Hey, appreciate it. Great job. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks, Ken. I also wanted to add that these days I'm attending a few conferences, some of them in parallel. I met some interesting technologies over at SaaS stock, and one of them was called OptiHow, and this was exactly what they were doing. So optihow.com. Okay. It seems that they're actually taking a lot of data and analytics, but you have to have a system at least for tracking, and they can help you optimize all of the marketing mix. I'm gonna share it. It's a startup. They're at the market proof concept, but I love entrepreneurship, so I'm willing to give them a boost, and hopefully they'll live up to it, because I really like the technology is great. I think that they still need to package it right and everything, but we'll get there somehow. So I'm sure that either the big enterprise solutions will be available to us all, or someone is going to innovate a really smart, easy to use system that's going to help us optimize the marketing mix. So we have a few more questions, if you're up to it, Michael.
I can take a couple more and then
okay.
I'll run my business.
Okay. We have another question from Susan Younger. How much is emotional intelligence mixed in this data gathering and analysis, or is it all left to the human reviewing the data received?
And did I hear that correctly? Emotional intelligence?
Yes, emotional intelligence.
And that's a great question. In fact, we just went through a training series of that in our organization, a whole series of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence to me is the human intelligence factor of it. That's the feeling, the reasoning, the perception. You know, and there's obviously in my mind ranges of information. For example, I can be presented with data that hurts my feelings, and so am I going to make the right decision because I'm emotionally unintelligent at that moment? So I think as long as the human factor is involved, there is going to be a human intelligence factor. I don't know how I would even measure that, but I can tell you that in conversations, and I'll give you an example, you can get information or data that doesn't support research that we've done. For example, where we're going to campaign into a market and we address it and we get into that market and we're not getting the results that we're looking for on that particular product vertical, that data presented can make, it can create an emotional intelligence challenge. And so what we have to do is we have to go back and look at all those processes. What I think is interesting though, and just as I kind of talk through this, I love that question. If the machine learning data elements are more reliable than the human gathering intelligence that's gathered that data, I wonder if that doesn't sort of calm the negative side of emotional intelligence, or maybe even temper the positive side of it. And so what I mean by that is, if we actually go and gather information and we run a campaign, we don't use any of the AI technologies that we're talking about. We don't use Kong, we don't use chatbots, we don't use those. We just do a human effort, and we succeed. The real question to me, to my directors and staff, is going to be, you know, how could we have done better? Did we have the right information? Did we, and is that the best that we can do? And if we actually had a study that said, okay, we run a similar campaign, but we use machine learning components and we train to that particular campaign, will the outcomes be better or worse? I can't help but to think that they might be better, because if the data is more accurate and more reliable through AI and machine learning, based on the inputs that and the rules that the humans are given that information, it just logically seems to me that there would be a better outcome, and that would make me emotionally intelligent at that moment, and I'd be very happy about it. So I think it's a great question, but I think as long as human intelligence is involved, you can't avoid the emotional piece of it, because that's your gut. That's go with your gut.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Totally agree. Yeah. And I think this is the last question. Ross is asking, what is Vista's service product? I said you should mention it.
Well, thank you, Ross. Let me plug my company. I appreciate the question. So Vista Solutions Group is a document management, workflow automation, data protection company. And so if you think about this journey of a document, everything is going digital, and I say that globally, you know, like I'm 16, everybody's doing it, everything. But in the systems where our clients are producing voluminous amounts of paper, and those papers are, of course, data and information, decisions are made off of them, court cases, investigations, claims, frauds, things like that. Our company takes that information that's digital. So whether they have it in PDF or whatever format, we can ingest that information into our system, and using optical character recognition, or OCR, it can scrape all that data up and bucket that data into tables, into a database. And we can simply automate the indexing of a document, so nobody has to type or point and click or move anything to a file. We can automatically black out information with no human interaction whatsoever, with a high level of confidence. We can, of course, electronic signatures, that's an easy one. Annotate documents, put sticky notes, determine who did it, what time. And then we take all of that data that's now digital. It could have been paper, it could have been just scattered in file systems. We organize all that data, and then we put an antivirus in the front of it if they don't have it. Most of them have it. Or we wrap it up and protect it by, we can put it on a separate drive, but of course we always put it in the cloud and back up that data. So we call it the DAP here. It's digitize, automate, and protect. So anybody that wants to go digital and automate work processes, eliminate point and click, a lot of manual processes, and then protect that data, that's what we do.
And I will also share, Michael, your web address, if you don't mind.
I think I may have put it on here, did I?
Okay. Yeah, so those are your contacts, amazing. So everybody has it. Thanks so much for being so generous with your time, Michael. We really appreciate it. It's been amazing. I've learned so many things today. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for letting us participate in this. And we love these webinars. All of them are great. So I'm very happy I could participate, and hope I didn't confuse anybody too much today.
I'm going to actually revisit this and resubmit an invite later in autumn, so that I won't take too much of your time, but I have a few more subjects that I think you're a subject matter expert in. So thanks again for taking the time. We're actually looking forward to the summer, and not just because of the amazing vacations I hope everyone will have, but we've prepared some amazing formats over the summer, which means that we are going to have in July and August panel discussions and networking sessions for all our business ecosystem. So make sure you follow us on social media. We will share all the contacts and how you can participate and connect and so on. This comes as a reply to your suggestions. So to the ones that have participated and have asked for different formats of such events. So we look forward to the speed networking sessions and to the panel conversations to make it as interactive as possible. And even more amazing, in autumn, we're actually preparing a prospecting course for the B2B growth community. And we're going to have quite a lot of technologies and automation tools on how you can do more prospecting and lead generation. On top of that, next week, we are going to meet on a panel discussion. This is the first in the series, where we're going to consider the benefits of digital events for small and medium businesses. Again, this comes as a reply to the business community. We have actually 2 important partners that are supporting this particular event. And in about 2 weeks, we're going to have an amazing session from Design Thinking Society, if you believe that there is such an amazing society, on how big companies use design thinking to create the products and services. So quite a lot of things happening this summer. It's a hot summer, but I hope that some of you will be able to join us. And I personally look forward to all of these sessions, to meeting you again. And thanks for your time. Thanks for joining today. And thanks again, Michael, for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.